What's up, guys? All right, Mr. Woodworth here with lesson 6.2. Yeah, we're going backwards. 6.2, finding percent of a number mentally. From what I saw in the Zoom, you guys have some tricks for finding percents of numbers mentally. Um, we'll go over the ones that you kind of knew already, and then we'll take it a little further for some other ones. And then there's plenty. This is by no means an exhaustive list of all the tricks that you can use or all the ways you can do mental math with percents. But it'll get you started, and it really just takes practice. Like, unless you're doing percents each day, going shopping and finding percents off, or finding the tax or the tip that you have to pay when you go to a restaurant. You really don't get good at this unless you're using it daily. But just from the Zoom, it seemed like some of you guys already knew some of these things. So let's get started. Copy this down. Make sure you have them all, a collection of these in your notebook so you can refer to them if you need to. All right. Anyway, sorry if you hear the swinging down in our basement. We have one of those big saucer swings that the kids jump on and go crazy on. So hopefully you don't also hear crying soon, because that would mean somebody's injured. All right, it happens. So this kind of family of tricks all goes with 100%, 10%, 1%, and we could even go down to 0.1% because it'll follow a similar pattern. It's very similar to when we were talking about powers of 10, and specifically negative powers of 10, like 10 to the negative first, 10 to the negative second, and what the patterns were when we multiplied by that. And it had to do with scientific notation. So if you make that connection to this, it might help. Not sure, but we are going to first, obviously, 100% of 60 is just one whole, right? That's what it means. So one whole, 60. So that equals 60. Okay? Now, if we go to 10%, we're going to be multiplying by 1 again, except in this case, we have one decimal place past the decimal here. So we have to essentially move, when we multiply by 0.1, we have to move the decimal place one place to the left. So our answer would be 6. Okay, so we're just multiplying by 0.1. All right, which is just multiplying by 1 and then moving the decimal over. Okay, and then 1%, okay, very similar. We're going to multiply 60 by 1, but since there's 2 decimal places, we have to move the answer's decimal place over 2 places, 1, 2, and so we get 0.6. Okay, so those are the 3 main ones. We could also go and talk about 0.1. So if it was no decimal places, 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places, well, then that would be multiply by 1 and move the decimal over 3 places. Okay, so finding these percents are pretty good. And these are good foundational things because these can help you. If you can find 10%, then you can easily find 20% and 30% and 40%, right? Because you can just get this answer and then multiply it. So 20% would be, 20% of 60 would be 2 10. So that'd be 12, right? 10% is 6, so 2 times 6 is 12. 30% would be 18, right? 30% of 60 would be 18. All right, so if you know this trick, then that can leapfrog you into a bunch of other tricks. All right, this, that 1% of 60 is 6/10. So then that 2% would be 1.2. That 3% would be 1.8. Okay, so just knowing that helps a lot. All right, now let's go to the 50% trick. Now this is one that most people get, okay, pretty easily. This is just half, right? Half, so half of 84. You could do times 0.5, or I like to think of it as half of 84, and that's just going to divide by 2 and get you 42. All right, well, what's 5% of 84? 5% of 84 is just going to be the same as 50%, but the decimals moved over one place value. So this was times a half, or times 0.5, whereas this one is going to be times, right, 0.05. So you get the same answer as that, 42, except one more decimal place over. So it's just like finding 50%, but we're just going to move the decimal over. So, all right, we find 50%, but then we can move that decimal one place over. So 5% would be 4.2. So our trick would be find 50% and then move the decimal over, and that will give us 5%. All right, so divide by 2, right? We divide this by 2 and then move the decimal over once. 50% is just divide by 2. 5% is divide by 2 and then move the decimal over. Okay, so that's a trick for 5%. I'm sure you knew 50%, but some of you might not have known 5%. All right, 25% and 75%. Well, we can just think of these as fractions. So 1/4 of 44. Well, that's essentially just 44 divided by 4, which gives us 11. Okay, now 75% of 44, that is going to be 3/4 of 44. So you would divide the 44 by 4 and then multiply by 3. So it'd be 11. So the same as this up there, but then we have to multiply it by 3. So the answer would be 33. So 3/4 is just divide by 4, multiply by 3, and you can get a quick answer. Okay, now obviously I chose very compatible numbers here. The 44 is a super easy number to find 1/4 of and 3/4 of. If you don't have a nice number, let's say I just gave you 43. Okay, if you don't have to be super accurate, then just round it to a nice number that's divisible by 4. Just round it to 44. And then you can at least get close. Okay, just if you're estimating, you don't need an exact answer. Like a lot of times when you're at the store, you're just like, well, do I have enough? This is going to be about $11, and I have 20, so I'm good to go. Okay, so anyway, next mental math procedures. Now, this looks like not mental math. It looks like, oh, you're showing all this work. How could this be mental? But the key is that you're taking a actually your brain does this a lot of times anyway. It kind of tries to regroup numbers. It tries to decompose numbers and move them around a little bit, and so that you can solve it without needing a calculator. So we're going to use the distributive property and see how we can use that to get us to use mental math to solve percents, okay? So 15%, right? Okay, we don't really have a trick for that. We could do the math. We could just do, 40 times 0.15 and multiply. Okay, or we can use the tricks we already know. So 15, we can decompose that. We can break it apart into two different percents. We can break the 15% into 10% and 5%. All right? Well, we know 10%, how to find 10% really easily, and how to find 5% really easily. Okay, so what we're going to do is, how's this distributive property? Well, we're going to find 10% of 40 and 5% of 40. 10% of 40, that's the distributive property, and then we're going to add it to 5% of 40. Okay, we can do those separately and then add the answers up. So how do we find 10% quickly? Move the decimal over one place. Boop. So 4. How do we find 5%? We cut it in half, 20, and then we move the decimal over, 2. Okay? Now, you could also think of, well, 5% is actually half of 10%. So you could always find the 10%, then divide that by 2, which is essentially moving the decimal over and dividing by 2. Right? See? So since 10% is 4, 5% would be 2. Okay, so you can do it that way as well. It's so hard to teach this lesson because there's so many ways to do it. That's why I'm trying to break it down into kind of little groups of ways to do things. So distributive property is one way to think about it. Break the percent up into percents that you know tricks for, then bring them back together at the end. So our answer would be 6 at the end. So 15% of 40 is 6. All right. Some of you might just know, 4 times 15 is 60. Put the 0 on there, that's 600, but then I got to move the decimal over twice and get 6. So there's like so many different ways to think this through. I hope by giving you a lot of them, I'm not confusing you, but it's just going to take practice, okay? So this is the distributive process. Let's try one like this. 20% of 81. Well, we can break 20%, 0.20, into two 10%. 10% plus 10% equals 20. So when we distribute here, we have to take 10% of 81. We're going to add to it 10% of 81. So we get 8.1 plus 8.1, which comes to 16.2. Now, it took me a long time to do that on paper here, but the idea is that you'll get good at this in your head and you'll be able to do it quickly. Okay? So now, is this the only way to do this? 20% of 81? No. Okay, you might even have better ways, or you could ask your parents and say, how do you do this? Okay, and you might like their way better. I'm just getting you some ideas of how to do these mentally because it's really helpful just in general life when you're calculating to be able to have some quick mental math tricks. All right. Okay, commutative and associative property. So we could do number 2 in this method as well down here. But let's check this out. So 60% of 70. All right, 60% of 70. Well, 60% times 70, isn't 60% just 6 groups of 10%? All right, 6 groups of 10%, 6 sets. So why don't we find 10% and then just multiply it by 6? So we break the 6%, 60% into groups of 10%. Now we'll use associative property here and group that first. We'll do the 10% times the 70, which 10% of 70 is just 7. And now we're just going to do 6 times 7, which is 42. All right? So now, showed a lot of work, but you should, with practice, you'll be able to do that quickly. So you see 60% of 70, you immediately do 10%, which is 7, and then you multiply it by 6, which is 42. So you can do that quickly. The work doesn't seem quick, but this is what you would do in your head. All right? Find the 10%, then multiply it by 6. All right? And then what about 3%? Right here, 3%. Well, isn't 3% just 3 1%? Yeah. So what we'll do is, running out of space, find 1%, which is 2 places over, 0.23, and then we'll multiply that by 3, which gives us 0.69. All right, so 3% of 23 is 69 hundredths. Okay, so there you have it. Those are some mental math tricks, mental math procedures. Hopefully some of those clicked and linked. The most important ones I would say are the 10% and 1%. These guys, and these guys, the 50 and the 5%, and also any of the fractional percents that you can memorize and use are often helpful. All right. Hopefully this was good. Woodworth out.